Hello, conscious investor, and welcome back. I'm your host, Julie Hawley. For over 4 years, I've paired my background in real estate investing, education, and coaching to create powerful content for you each week. This podcast is where we take a holistic approach to investing by focusing on 3 ingredients to a life of personal freedom: health, mindset, and wealth. We'll talk about everything from passive investing through syndication and how to use your retirement accounts to boost your investing, to mineral balancing and gut-brain health, and into topics that cultivate your inner strength and resilience so you can thrive regardless of any of life's current events. And yes, those are all episodes currently available and linked in the show notes below. Join me each Monday for a mindset episode and later in the week for an interview with expert investors and health professionals so that you can experience your greatest health, strongest mindset, and build the wisest wealth. Chris, I am so excited to have you here on the Conscious Investor podcast. Welcome to the show. And we all want to know, what do you do and how did you get started?
Thank you very much for having me, Julie. So that's quite an interesting story in that I grew up in a relatively poor situation, and it was always ingrained in me that I had to go to school, get a great education, and get that corporate job and buy the house and a 401k. And everyone's heard this story, but I nailed that strategy. I went and got 2 advanced degrees. I had jobs at Fortune 25 companies for about 15 years of my life. And I thought I was living the American dream, but I really felt empty. And it dawned on me one day, Julie, that no matter how high I climbed the corporate ladder, there was nothing that I could leave to my kids or my family. If I left them a lot of money, it would simply be gone in a matter of time. So I wanted to be able to create a legacy. So in 2017, 2018, I started really focusing on how to create other streams of income. And I had in my mind that I was going to go and buy single family houses, maybe 2 in 2017 and just build up 1 or 2 every year. And I was doing my due diligence and I talked to some folks who I thought were in real estate, and they all said the same thing. Like 5 different people basically said the same thing. Before you go buy a single family house, learn more about multifamily, some bigger stuff. So I bit the bullet and I went to a real estate meetup. And Julie, that was like the first time that I really had a gut check and a humility pill, because here I was, an attorney with an MBA, a high powered MBA, and I had a great job at a big company. And I was going to walk into a place that I'm not really sure I needed, but something was drawing me to it. I went into, it was a restaurant after work, and I sat in my car for about 15 minutes, just arguing with myself. Am I going? Am I not going? Am I going? Am I not going? What are these people possibly going to teach me? Maybe I'll just go back to my job and just do that. I finally decided to go in, and it changed my life. I heard story after story, a quick presentation, the standard format, educational, and then story after story of people who were getting into real estate. They didn't think it was possible for them. They had these jobs. They were able to retire themselves and their spouse, after 3, 4, 5 years. And they really seemed to have the lifestyle that I was wanting. So I'm looking at these folks, and I've got, this great education, this great job, nice house. I thought I had it all. And then I'm like, you know what? Maybe they're doing it better than I am. So I went to get more education on multifamily, went to several more meetups, several big educational conferences, and joined a mentor group. And I went all in. And I started investing by 2018, and 2019, I left my corporate job to do this full time, to focus on real estate full time. I've built up my portfolio to about 15 multifamily properties, and also have an investment in land in Austin, in Texas, Florida, and Georgia. And some have sold over time, and the transactions happen. But that's what I'm doing now. I went from corporate employee, the thing I thought I was supposed to be doing, living a corporate dream, to investing. And it's I met a lot of great people. It completely changed my lifestyle. And I want to pass it on to my kids. And we'll get into it a little bit later because it's so important to me to pass on the legacy. Remember that it dawned on me that I couldn't pass anything on to my kids. Well, this is something I can pass on to my kids, but the first thing I wanted to pass on was very specific knowledge about how to make money. I used to look at it like, oh, paycheck, big paycheck is even better. And now it's more of a passive income or multiple streams of different income.
This is one of the elements that connected you and I when we met at an event last fall. Is just the book that you wrote, Renting from Your 6-year old, and one of the tenets that I you may or may not be aware of the conscious investors, under the wealth pillar, there's health, mindset, wealth. Under wealth, we have tangible, yeah, the paper asset, the things we can actually see, touch, taste, feel. We have intangible, I can't see them, but experiences and the feelings. And then we have transferable. And that's really what you're talking about. Is I want to transfer everything from myself to my kids so that they can be successful even when I'm gone. And I absolutely love that premise. I actually think, Chris, that this transcends legacy wealth. When I hear people talk about legacy wealth seems very limited to, in the way people talk about it in general, it seems very limited to, this is how I'm passing on the family estate, the tangible wealth that we've created. And that's why after 3 generations, it's generally vaporized because they didn't transfer the knowledge side of it. So there's so many questions I have, um, before we go down that path. I'd love to know, because I try to hear conscious investor, I've got you. I hear the question. When you left your corporate America job, I mean, we've already established, like, you were a high powered attorney. You were probably very well compensated. Um, where was there a lifestyle change when you were transitioning from corporate into full time real estate? Did you and your wife have a discussion about this? What was that like? And did you have all of the, it was like, kind, I made this much and now we filled the gap and so I can leave?
Well, you did mention that it was pretty highly paid. Yes, although I was not working in the legal group at the time, it was still a nice corporate role. We have not replaced it. Well, real estate's weird in that one year you knock it out of the park, and in another year it's kind of dry. Just like last year. I mean, my distributions were really low last year, only one or two sales, but the year before it crushed it. So it's kind of, it's up and down based on where interest rates are and the market is and activity. But no, my wife was all on board, because she's smart. She has the brains in the family, but um, she was on board. And what we were able to do is really take advantage of the taxes. So despite those nice big paychecks, and my wife also worked in the corporate world, despite all that gross income, the tax man was taking a big bite out of that. And we were able to eliminate most of that because of my full-time real estate status and all of my activity. So, you kind of look at that and all of a sudden, wow, I don't need to make exactly the same because I'm keeping more than I was keeping before. And that's a huge thing. So we went all in 2018 and paid a lot of money for tax strategy advice and finding the right firm to help us with all that. And it's funny because I did practice tax law, but I was more on the corporate side, and it never really dawned on me that I should start doing that for myself. It was something always for the future. Well, it kind of lit a fire under me, having kids and wanting to pass on wealth and knowledge. So we really went all in on tax strategy, and I kind of add something every year. When you get involved with taxes, it's a very big learning curve. And even if you're getting good advice, there's still a lot to learn and then a lot to implement, right? It just takes time. And over the years, we've just been implementing one strategy at a time or two strategies at a time. And now we're really focused on getting our kids involved in the business, which is absolutely wonderful. And all the tax benefits that come with that.
Oh yes, yes, substantial tax benefits with having your kids involved in your
Yep.
business. I really value that you're talking about. Hey, we're going to implement these strategies in a way that we can successfully do that. So sometimes people will just dive into the deep end and say like, I'm going to tackle all this, and then they end up drowning and not making any forward, progress. By the way, conscious investor, check out Brian Moran's book, The 12-Week Year, if you're looking for a strategy on how to tackle larger goals, or you could check out John Acuff's book, All It Takes Is a Goal. Both of those are written for very different people, but strategies on implementing something for a lasting change. So I love that you're actually a role model and like, hey, we're going to just do this consistently over time, and we're going to reap the rewards of that. I want to ask you also about land. You threw land into the portfolio. So I love the humility of going to a meetup and being inspired, um, and learning. You have the humility to actually listen to somebody and say, okay, before I invest in single family, I'm going to explore my options. And obviously through that process, you also discovered, purchasing land. How is that beneficial for your portfolio? And what are you enjoying about that asset class?
So the land was just to diversify a little bit. I'm a limited partner in that deal. It's land outside of Austin, pretty close to a Tesla factory. And the goal with that is to eventually build multifamily. Now, that was just for diversification, and maybe the multiple on that is 2 or 3 or what have you. But I got all excited about it. But the downside of that is that there's no cash flow for a long time. So, I had put money into that and I failed to put more money into cash flowing assets. So, but it's a good learning experience. I'm getting a little bit of exposure to the development process, which is something I'd eventually like to get into. So that's more of a that's more of an educational part of the portfolio in that I'm learning a little bit, getting a little bit exposure to, the land acquisition, and then developing, going through the process of getting the land ready and approved and everything.
That's
Um,
getting having a land. I'm in a development project, right, and going through the rezoning and the planning committees and everything, and getting the entitlement, everything set up and structured correctly, the engineering. Yeah, it's an entire process, and I commend you on going down that path, because it's fun. It's pretty intense, but it's a lot of fun.
it is. It's good to see it happening. I wish it would happen faster because there's no returns or anything, and we'll get the opportunity to roll our investments into the multifamily property once that's built, which is nice. But it's just a long time. It's eventually going to pay off, and I think there'll be a couple multiples in there, but that might be a small part of my portfolio. So most of my stuff is multifamily. I have the land, and I also interesting. I invested in a biotech company. It's not a startup. It's about 10 years old, but they had a couple round of financing, so I invested heavily in that. So we'll see. We'll see. I like the prospects of that one. But anyway, um, the bulk is in multifamily, but I did diversify a little bit.
Yeah. I really appreciate that. And I think diversification is really important, even within real estate and asset classes within real estate, public assets and private assets. Like, it's just good to have an investment portfolio that is truly diversified. All right, I want to circle back because I know that once we start this conversation, because you and I had this conversation, I'm like, oh, it's going to be hard to go back into the investing side of things once we start talking about, you know, renting from your 6 year old and your I think it's your daughter that you were renting from.
Yeah, I had at the
Is that
time I
correct?
had a 6-year-old daughter, and
She's
I
not
wanted.
6 anymore,
She's not
but
six anymore. She's not six anymore. So there's more after this story, and there's probably another book in the works at some point about her growth after this particular book. But I have a background in psychology in um, teaching kids, so I wanted to take all the experience that I had from my psychology background, my legal background, my investing background, and my corporate background, and I wanted to teach my daughter, give her a crash course in being an employee and then making a transition to an investor. because I wanted her to see the upside and the downside of being an employee, and then same thing with being an investor. But, you know, I don't know if you've ever tried to teach a 6-year-old anything, but it's damn near impossible. Okay. Especially something as complex as investing or cash or anything like that. Now, I could have explained things to her for 20 years and it would not have done any good. I've had these conversations with adults and you basically cannot explain it to some of them. So, what's the best way to teach somebody something? Is it to talk about it or is it to do it? And I think there's a little bit of talking, but more doing. So, I came up with
Action.
this, yeah, action, absolutely. So, I came up with this process for my daughter to really deeply understand the benefits of investing in hard assets and generating cash flow. So, what I did, I set her up to be an employee. Okay. This is the same thing that almost all people go through, all adults go through. I gave her a job around the house and I paid her. And her simple one job was to turn the lights on at night in the back of the house and in the back and in front of the house and to turn them off during the day. So on at night, off during the day. And for that, every day, she would do that every day. She got paid $1 a week. Okay. And then the second week, I added another job. It was to straighten out the rugs in the house. All right. And she earned another dollar. And then in the third week, I gave her another job. So she had, well, after 3 weeks, she had 3 jobs and she's making $3 a week. So her job, 3 jobs, and then her wages of $3 a week. After several months of doing this, she built up 25, $30. And I gave her the opportunity. Now, here's where I transitioned her, or I wanted her to transition into being an investor. I gave her this offer, and let me know if you think sounds familiar or is parallel in any way to the real world. I offered her the opportunity to buy the toaster that was sitting in our kitchen for $25. And in exchange for that, I would pay her $1 of rent per week so that the family could use the toaster. So she would become the owner of the toaster, and then she would collect rent from the family. Okay, she's buying an asset. You and I would buy an apartment or assisted living facility, but she's buying something around the house that she can feel, that she can touch. So for $25, here's the deal: $25 in exchange for $1 a week in cash flow. Now, I don't want to do it. Okay. And this went on for several weeks. No, I don't want to do it. I don't understand. I don't want to do it. Okay, that's fine. I didn't push her. The whole point was not to push her. I needed her to come to the table by herself. Because if I pushed her, she might be making that decision for the wrong reason. Okay. So finally, she says, okay. I drew up a little agreement. It had about 5 sentences on it. And I sat down to read it with her. And I basically said, daughter agrees to buy the toaster from mommy and daddy for $25, and mommy and daddy agree to pay rent of $1 per week on Saturdays or Saturdays or Sundays. She looked at it. She said, "Are you taking my money?" I said, "Well, yeah, but you're going to get the toaster." She started crying and she ran up to her stairs screaming, "I don't want you to take my money." And then she slammed the door to her room. Well, that didn't go like I thought it was going to go, but you know what? That's what basically happens in the real world. When you offer somebody or talk to somebody about, hey, I've got this real estate investment, or, oh, this is what I'm doing, are they accepting right away? Or are they, that's not going to work. I don't want to do that. I'm invested here. I'm fine. Every excuse in the book. They basically do exactly what my 6-year-old did. Okay. A couple weeks later, I didn't bring it up anymore to her. I don't want to offend her. I needed her to take time to really process what was going on. One day, a couple weeks after this catastrophe, she looks at, I'm in the kitchen. She's in the living room playing on the floor. She looks up at me and she says, "Fine, I'll buy the damn toaster." Like, whoa, I didn't say anything about that. It was as if she was having an argument in her mind about this very issue. And she finally decided, yeah, I was going to do it. She was going to do it. So I went and got the agreement. We walked through it gently. She signed it. Me and my wife signed it, and it was done. So I take $25 out of her bank, which was just a bag, like
A
a
Ziploc
glad
bag or
it was a Ziploc bag. Yeah, it was her bank. Okay, she takes it out, but it was a weekend. So what happened was she got paid for her jobs, and then she got $1 of rent for the following week. So I almost drained her account, and then she got money back into it right away. And then this goes on for months. I added another job. She got another. I added another asset. The second asset she didn't really want to buy like a month later. And then after that, she started wanting to buy stuff. As she got more money, she's like, yeah, I'll buy that. I'll buy that. Okay, I'll do that. So it was hard at first for her, but then, within a couple months, she's like, yeah, I want to buy everything. I like this concept of free money. I pulled her aside one day and I said, sweetie, those jobs that you do, the lights and the rugs and that other thing. And she's like, yeah. I said, we can't pay you for those anymore. You're too expensive. And we're gonna let your younger sister do those, and we're gonna pay her less. And she got a little upset. And she said, but are you still gonna pay me for the things I bought? I said, oh yeah, those are your assets. We have to pay you rent for those. And she's like, but I'm not going to get paid for the jobs. I said, no, we're not going to pay you anymore. She's like, oh, okay. And she takes off and goes back to play. So if she did not buy those assets, I would have taken away her income streams, her jobs. But because she had those assets and she was generating passive income on those, she didn't care about her jobs. Does that sound parallel to anything that could possibly happen in the real world?
it is the story
I
that
laid her off.
Yep.
So she went from being an employee, a happy employee, getting a little bit of money every week, to being very scared about doing these investments. She didn't know they were investments. We never talked about investments. We never talked about passive income. I just made an offer to her. We didn't talk about any of the complex issues or any of the simple issues either, because she would not have understood them. But since she actually did them, she felt what it was like to use some of her money to buy something and then get paid for it. That's the critical piece, because she understood then what this was all about. I no longer needed to explain what I do, on a daily basis. I no longer need to explain investments. And when she lost her jobs, couldn't care less. Great, thanks. Now I don't have to do those jobs. I'm perfect. Great. She eventually was making $20 a week on her assets, on her investments, compared to $3 a week in her jobs. She couldn't care less.
I know, there's some time. So I would love to ask the question to say, how has this impacted her life as she's, matured in life?
She doesn't spend money. She Years before we started this whole process with her, we would go into a toy store just for giggles. It was just someplace to hang out. There's a really nice toy store close to our house when we lived in Katy, Texas. And we would just go in there and look at stuff. And she's like, I want to buy that. 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 I'm like, no, 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 no. But let me show you how to make money. And then maybe you can come back and buy whatever you want later. But now she's got all this money and like not really interested. So she understands what things cost and the value of things. And she's not really that interested in toys anymore. Like she'll get plenty of stuff for birthday from relatives and friends and Christmas and stuff like that. So she doesn't spend her money anymore on toys. She used to a little bit, but now it's like, nah. She saved her money and she bought a computer. When she was 9, she bought a computer. And the purpose of the computer, she likes art and she wants to learn graphic design. I said, that's wonderful, because I need logos and different things for websites and this and that. And then if you start doing that, I can start paying you for real. And then we can have some fun with Roth IRAs and then real investments. How long is that going to take? Another year? So, she'll be 11, 12 when all that stuff happens. That's the plan. But all this started with a little idea of getting her into assets around the house and not pushing her into it, letting her come to the conclusion that she was going to do it. She's going to give it a shot and see what happens. She made the big mindset transformation that anybody would have to go through of using wages to buy an asset. And she didn't even know she was doing it. So
It's
go ahead.
I was gonna say it's so powerful because even before I went on the active side of commercial real estate investing, my husband and I went on the passive side, and we did that intentionally. I said we have. I know I want to be active. I know I want to support investors in placing their capital in private investments. However, I want to walk the path because I know that there's a lot of the psychology behind it. There are a lot of feelings involved, and I want to be very in tune with those feelings. So, what she experienced is all of those feelings at such an early age. It's just amazing to be able to collapse all of that and say, oh, all of that's going to be very natural. It's kind of like my
Yeah.
kids when they go, if we go look at a property, you know, they'll maybe reluctantly be like, oh, well, how much you're going to have to replace X, Y, and Z. And that's going to be about, it's like, okay, you're getting it just by osmosis. But I love the intentionality that you had in, guiding your daughter. How about daughter number two? Did she
She
get
said,
hired for lesser? And was she
yeah,
resentful that she got
absolutely.
50 cents? No, I'm
Absolutely.
kidding.
She gets paid peanuts and she has a different job. Now she keeps asking for more jobs. She turns 6 pretty soon, so she'll run through the same process. But she's going to pick it up a lot faster just by seeing what's going on. And, I pay my older daughter sometimes when my younger daughter's around, and the younger daughter's like, hey, what about me? I'm like, well, you're going to have to do what she did. And the younger one's on board. So, she'll have an easier path of it. The second time is always easier. Second time, after you've seen something, whether, you're witnessing with someone else, it gets easier.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. It's
Yeah.
exciting to see, what can happen. Now, conscious investor, I mean, like this is a book. Head over to Amazon. You can pick up the book and you can implement this. If you have a friend, most of us know people that are having kids or grandkids or of the like. Chris, if you're watching, is holding up the front cover. So if you're on YouTube, you can actually see the cover. So you want to make sure you go pick up Renting from a 6-year old, from my 6-year old, and you can gift that book. Buy a copy for yourself and buy a copy to gift somebody else so that they can have that front knowledge on the upside.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Julie. And it's not only for people with kids, it's really help get over your mindset. And if you're having some difficulty with somebody else as an investor or getting a spouse on board, share that book with them. There's a lot of simple yet profound and deep lessons through the eyes of a 6-year-old that are applicable no matter what age you are.
Hmm. Yeah, it's so true. Now you have another book as well, New Steel, and I appreciate that. I think you and I were talking off air, just how sports, we both like cycling, and the struggles that we can face as we are training for something, and actually actively going through an event. They push us, right? And that psychology behind that applies to all parts of life. So I'd love to just hear about New Steel and the lessons that people can gain when they pick that book up.
Yeah, so New Steel chronicles an interesting issue that I had previously in my life, and that I've had both of my hips replaced. And the first one was when I was in my 30s. Well, I didn't know, what kind of activity level I'd be able to get back to, but I had my first hip replaced right before my first daughter was born, and I could barely walk 10 feet without severe pain, and I was very concerned about the kind of father or husband I'd be able to be if I couldn't, if I wasn't that mobile. So I decided to have one of my hips replaced after a lot of alternative treatments. It was the last resort, but I had to do it. And I didn't know how I'd be able to come back from that. I did a lot of physical therapy. 18 months later, I had to have my other hip replaced. and I I wanted to get rid of my limp because I was so embarrassed about having that done, and I wanted to remove any evidence in the form of a limp. So I did a lot of physical therapy, a lot of stretching, and it worked. I mean, no one can tell. If I didn't tell you, there's no way you would be able to tell. Um, and I got a little sick and tired of people at my corporate job not making fun of me necessarily, but making accommodations that I didn't really think needed to be made. So, for example, I'd go into a meeting and a pregnant woman, 8 months pregnant, would try to get up and give me a chair. I said, no, 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 I'm fine. Please don't. Please don't. So I really wanted to do something to show myself and really put any negative thoughts out of my head that I was back and I wanted to just be active like I was before. So I set a goal to do an Ironman triathlon, and one wasn't good enough. So I signed up for two, and I was able to do both of those in 2021. Um, New Steel is about facing a challenge of the hips and then having the mindset of overcoming such challenges and completing an Ironman or whatever challenge you may have in your life. So it's helpful to athletes, it's helpful to people facing other challenges, whether it's business, relationship, health. So that's the concept of New Steel, helping people, chronicling what I did and helping other people face and overcome their challenges. So that was very rewarding book to write. I end up talking about that a lot. I do presentations at running stores, and I get contacted somewhat frequently about people. Hey, I'm going through this too. Thanks for writing a book. And what did you do here? How did you do that? So it's been very rewarding.
That's amazing. Why were you why were you embarrassed? Was it an age thing? Was it the I should need a hip replacement because I'm in my 30s, not in my 60s or 70s?
Yeah,
Or
yeah, yeah. There's some of that. I was really young. I felt for some reason defective in that. How could this be happening to me? People were some. Here's the thing. I would tell people, "Oh, I'm going to be out, but I'm going to have my hip replaced, or I had my hip replaced," and they say, "Here's the common response: I'm so sorry to hear that. How unfortunate. What are you going to do now?" That's the response I was getting from people when they found out because I'm limping around the office, using crutches or what have you, or office gossip, and people just come up to me, "Oh, I heard. Sorry about that," and that really bothered me. It kind of pushed a lot of um, I don't know, not sorrow, but negative or not demeaning. It's hard to explain, but I just didn't feel like I started to believe it. Like I wasn't as good as I used to be, or I wasn't as good as someone else. Well, it turns out I went from the guy who had his hips replaced to the guy who did two Ironmans. And that's a great feeling.
that's a really powerful feeling. What's interesting, and I think you and I, since we both love mindset and psychology and such, just that concept of this really is such a good representation about the people that we surround ourselves with, willingly or unwillingly, knowingly or unknowingly. It's like at some point the outside influences start to influence us, and so it's so critical to be aware of that. And that's really amazing. It also speaks volumes that they were, um, not empathetic, but sympathetic in a sense. And like, oh, I'm so sorry for you, when that's so rad. I'm so excited that you got to do that. You're going to be back and probably feeling better than ever. It's really interesting what that speaks of someone's perspective on life and the gifts that we have with modern medicine.
Yeah, it's mindset's definitely a big part of it. Like, oh, I couldn't do that. I don't want to do that. That's too hard. It takes too much time. And none of that stuff is true. You know, I never would have thought about doing an Ironman before my hip surgeries. But then after I started breaking it down, I'm like, that doesn't sound that hard. You start looking
Mhm.
at the math and how much time you have and how much effort it would take. And it's like, you know what, that's totally possible. Let's do it. And there's so many other things in life, whether it's starting a business, whether it's a local 5K charity run or a bike ride or whatever. It's like these things are not that hard, but we build them up to be so incredibly difficult that we stop ourselves. We talk ourselves out of it, or we let somebody else talk ourselves out of it. So, you mentioned other people who we surround ourselves is very important. Who we surround ourselves with is very important, and that's absolutely true. And whether or not you surround yourself with the right people, the wrong people, or no people, all of that's critical. And I
Yeah.
would say surrounding yourself with no people may be almost as bad as surrounding yourself with the wrong people, because things get challenging. And without someone pushing and driving people, or me, I get a little, I slack off a little bit, and I don't want to. I know if I go ride a bike or I go for a run, I will be a lot faster if there's someone with me. You
That's
know,
I went to a spinning class last night inadvertently. I was just going to go and train by myself, and I walk into the room, and I'm training in a different way. Normally, contest investor, I'm in this transition. Normally, I used to spend the last few years early in the morning, and now my kids want to work out, and we're figuring that out, what works best for everybody doing this together. And so I open the door and there's a spin class taking place. I'm like, okay. But you're right. When you're around other people, there's a different energy that takes place. And, for our Enneagram type 3 achievers and for other people, it's like, oh, I better step up. I better make sure I'm doing it. Meanwhile, the lights are out in this room, except for the fluorescent lights. So nobody can see, nobody
yeah.
cares. It's all in our head.
I commend you for doing spinning classes. I've done spinning classes and I've done Ironmans, and I got to tell you, I'm not doing any more spinning classes. Not doing it.
Yeah,
They're
it's
tough.
pretty
They're
intense.
tough.
Normally, I put on my own spinning class. I'm like, normally I just
Yeah.
go in and turn on my music and do my thing. So it's definitely interesting. Also, like just going into sometimes I'll work out of a co-work space just for the energy of other people. There's a great little spot here in my town, and it's nice to be around that energy. If it's
Yeah.
uplifting, it's really powerful.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting over the next few years. I think so many people have transitioned to working from home. I'm just wondering, you know, what happens to their goals? Are they as driven as they were when they were surrounded by other people? I mean, how are people staying connected? I've suffered with that, in that I I'm an introvert for, I don't know, 60% of the time, but 40% of the time I've got to be out getting energy. And my wife will actually kick me out of the house in the afternoon if I don't get outside and do something, because I'm not as effective. I'm not as cheerful. I don't have as much energy. But if I'm around people, it's very helpful. And this is, talking to you, this is fantastic. It's so much so that this I felt so secluded in my office that I put up pictures of very successful people in my office to basically be my board. So if I'm not being productive or I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, they're looking over my shoulder. So they're on the wall right there. Okay,
Who's on the wall?
there's Tony Robbins, Darren Hardy, Oprah Winfrey. I'm on the wall too. I'm
Good.
included in that. So it's like my best self looking at me. Am I being my best self?
Mm,
Um, Sylvester Stallone, Sarah Blakely, Brendan Burchard, Grant Cardone. So this is basically my board. So they motivate me by just staring at me. It's a little freaky, but it helps to keep me on task and really reaching for maybe just a little bit more than I would reach being in here by myself.
mm.
That didn't come out right because I know they're not really here, but you get the point, right? I
I-
mean, they have an influence on me simply by having a picture of them in here.
yeah. Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna see Brendan Burchard next week at his growth day event, my second one. And yeah, even like he's a fantastic person to have on your wall because true to the core, inside and out.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about when you transitioned after your hip surgery. How many years was it, or what was the timeline? Because I'm curious to think of making a transition and saying, okay, I had the hip replacement, and people in the office respond a different way. I'm going to go out on the limb and say that must have been alarms like, wow, I have such a different mindset than these people. Did that help expedite the process of I need to transition out of this space?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's these are great company, good, a lot of great people, but they're just in a different space. A lot of folks are very happy to have that job, and that's it. They're taking a very passive approach to their lives, and maybe it's the golden handcuffs of financial success. That wasn't good enough for me because, again, going back to, I wanted more for my family, and I wanted to be able to leave something for my kids, knowledge and legacy. So yeah, I really wanted to be out of there eventually, and I'm glad I did it when I did. So yeah, having folks around you that were just not where I wanted to be, um, is something I really wanted to get out of. And starting going to those meetups, these people didn't have corporate jobs anymore. They left, they retired, and they were doing all these great things. They were traveling, they were spending more time with their kids, they were having fun. And I'm going working for, cleaning up nonsense, and it doesn't make any sense. I don't feel like I have a purpose. Am I really going to do this for another 20 years? The money's great, but am I going to sell my soul for this? No. So surrounding myself with other people who were doing something else, in real estate, and then more on the health side, was fantastic. It's as if it's as if I bottomed out when I had my hips replaced, and then I was motivated to do a lot of physical therapy to overcome a limp, and the physical therapists were fantastic. So I was just on this upward trajectory, and I just kept going. That's what it was like.
Mm. I love that, and I like the progression and surrounding yourself by people at meetups, finding that community. It's so important. So full circle here, conscious investor. Think about this. I believe attending events is critical for all of life, and attending a variety of events. Conscious investor. I like to go see authors give presentations. So I loved seeing Ryan Holiday and Robert Greene. That was phenomenal. And going to see Brendan Burchard, who's a motivational, speaker, and going to real estate events. Like, you don't have to just isolate and go to one single type of event. You can go to lots of different events to nurture yourself in a lot of different ways. But I love that you and I met at an event, and the catalyst in your real estate journey was curiosity, finding a solution, and going to a RIA and having that aha. And then that supports the mindset shift that you're making, and allows you that confidence, even supports that confidence to say, I do need to transition out of where I'm at. In conscious investor, you might be happy where you're working. That there are so many people, and staying at your job, if that's the gift that you love it, like, that's great. If you're feeling that urge to leave, you can borrow some of these elements that Chris has put into his life, that supported him in making that transition.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I love that. And you're right. There's a lot of people who absolutely love what they do, and they're providing a lot of value for the people around them, or clients, or customers, or what have you. And by all means, keep doing it. But if you have the opportunity to, supplement that income, or add something somewhere else to your life, feel free to do that. And I got to tell you, over the years, it's not been it's not been all roses, chocolates and roses. I mean, there's been a lot of scary times where I can't believe I'm doing this, or are we really thinking? Are we really? What are we doing? Here's one. My wife and I, we bought a house in in Katy, Texas, and we put a lot of money into it because we thought we were going to live there for the rest of our life. It was absolutely beautiful. And we were there for 6 years, and we decided that we don't want to be here anymore. And we sold the house, and we got ready to move. We got ready to relocate. We live in Florida now. And we sold this beautiful house. It was where my daughter was born. Both my daughters were born. So many memories in that house. And we got rid of it because we were going to move. So we sold that house, and we moved into a rental because we could not find a place in Florida at the time, and we couldn't get them into the schools that we wanted to in Florida. So we moved into a rental for 2 different rentals over 3 years before we finally got them into the school we wanted to get them into Florida. And the reason we sold that house was to be able to pull the trigger when we wanted to and just be able to walk away. So every time our lease came up on the rental, we're like, can we get them into school? Do we have a place to go to in Florida? And as soon as we did, we just left. And it was so strange to sell that house. I mean, I cried. When we moved out, I cried. Because there were so many great memories in the house. I thought we put so much money in. We did, we basically took it down to the studs and made it the way we wanted to have it. And we just got rid of it because it was not what we wanted anymore long-term, because having spent time with other high achievers, we realized we could do a lot better. And let's just go get the lifestyle and the location that we wanted. So we did that. And that was a big, scary, sad decision, but we absolutely love it.
I will commend you on that. And I will say it is absolutely worth living in a destination place or a place that you love geographically. So having been someone that's moved around, and I currently live in what I consider for me and the things that my husband and family love, like this is our slice of heaven. It just seems like our Garden of Eden, and I'm grateful every day that I can mountain bike in the mountain bike season 10 minutes away. Like, wow, what a gift. So
yeah, life is so short. I mean, that's such a cliche, but it's so true, in that you never know how much time you have, and why spend any time being somewhere you don't really want to be. Make it happen. I think a lot of times we suffer from inertia, and that it's difficult to break the gravity of where we currently are. But if we did, we would be a lot happier.
You and I have lived that in Conscious Investor. I want to encourage you, take that to heart and challenge yourself. Look for areas where you feel complacent, or you feel that movement internally that I need to do something here, and don't stuff that away. That's there to serve you and support you in, creating a beautiful life. Chris, we have to wrap up. I knew that you and I would be able to just have this great conversation just by nature of our conversation at the event we met at. How can the Conscious Investor connect up with you? I know you've got some really cool freebies that people can download that will support them. Give us a whole kit and caboodle.
Yeah, so thank you, Julie. Anyone can reach out to me. My website is chrisbystriansky.com, but I have a much easier way, just with simple texts. So I have 12 action steps to financial freedom. And to get that, you just type the word action to 66866. So action to 66, send it to 66866. And then I also have an endurance success blueprint. If anyone wants to be more active and would like to do some type of event where it's a 5K or a marathon or half marathon or what have you, and you have a lot of concerns, I can solve all your concerns. Just text success to that same number, 66866. Those are the best ways.
Awesome. Conscious Investor, I know Chris has resonated with you. And just like I always say, don't be a stranger with me. Don't be a stranger with Chris. And remember, adventure belongs on the trail, not in your investing and not in your personal life. So if you need any level of support in taking that first or next step towards investing, or you're thinking, golly, I need to clear out some of the mental space between my ears, make sure you head down to the show notes, click the link to schedule a call with me so that we can talk. It's fun. People are always like, oh, you're the same as on the podcast. Yeah, go figure. I value authenticity. And so it's going to just be a real conversation. It'll feel like a podcast, really. So head on down to the show notes, schedule time. Let's have a chat. And until next time, live big, love bigger, and do great things.
Are you enjoying this episode? Help spread the word by sharing the episode with a friend or family member. Because really, where would any of our lives be without other people sharing great content with us? Help spread the word by sharing on your social platforms and with those you care about. And remember, tag me at Happy Julie Holly.